Hello, my name is Carol Strangway. My husband is Merle. I have two children. One of them is your pastor. You know him as Pastor Nick. I call him Nicholas. We also have a daughter and her husband Brandon. They live in Memphis, Tennessee, and they are on staff at the Life Church in Memphis. I actually was saved at the Jefferson Church at the age of 5. My father was the pastor. Habakkuk 2:3 says, "For the vision is yet for an appointed time, but at the end it shall speak and not lie. Though it tarry, wait for it, because it will surely come, it will not tarry." This is the verse that I felt God placed into my heart at the beginning of 2016. I try to look and seek His heart for a verse every year. And this verse, I don't know, it didn't jump out at me. I didn't want that to be my verse. I wanted it to be something different, but I kept coming back to it. I thought it maybe applied to our church ministry in Athens, Winborn Church. Just wasn't sure what it meant. I almost forgot it. We were at the beach with Nick's family and our daughter Brandy's family, and we had had a wonderful week at the beach together. The last night that I was there, I had gone to bed, we were asleep, and I got up, went into the restroom, and only was using my light from my phone to get myself back into the bed and not wake up my husband, Merle. And I saw something. With my eyes, I saw something. And I'm not going to divulge and go into details about that, but I saw an image. And I didn't know what it was. I was still kind of partly, not fully awake. I didn't seem like, but I definitely saw something. If I were an artist, I could paint a picture of what I saw. As I laid down in the bed beside my husband and the light went out on my phone, I just reached up into the dark and I just made the symbol of a cross. And I said, "Jesus, I don't know what that was." And I didn't. But I said, whatever it is, I just want to draw your attention to it. I didn't even know how to pray. So I went to sleep, and the next night after we got home from the beach, I felt the lump. And over the course of the next 2 or 3 weeks, I found out I did in fact have cancer. This cancer was at a very high rate of growth. Anything above 20% from a biopsy of reproducing cancer cells is considered high rate. The doctor said mine was at 95% growth rate. He also said that we were racing against time because if it reached my bloodstream, it would be a lot more difficult. Further tests showed that it was triple negative, which is not what you want to have because there's only one treatment and it works or it doesn't work. And the doctor said if it did not work, that maybe he could promise me that I would live until Christmas of that year, 6 months. And that was so important to me because there was a little boy named Houston that was going to be born in December. It was a very scary time. And I realize now, looking back, that simple prayer, that simple motion of making a cross was, first of all, there was something evil that was coming to attack me. And that simple prayer was God coming into my spirit and saying, "Put on your armor and get ready for battle." And that's what I did. When the doctor spoke the word cancer to me, I was by myself at the appointment because I wasn't expecting to hear the word cancer. And as I got up off that table and I began to walk out the door of the imaging center, I just felt the words come into my mind that this sickness is not unto death. I went on out to my car, called my husband, got home, the word began to spread. And I thought about those words and I thought, you know what, I think that's just is that just me trying to comfort myself, or were those words from God? I didn't know. I'll tell you one thing, when you hear the word cancer, and you hear the word that you might not live, death, your focus becomes very small. My heart, everything else vanished away except for my daughter Brandy and my son Nick, my babies who were around age 30. My heart just went straight to them. I had to go then to the hospital over the next 2 or 3 weeks to have different tests run and so forth. And as I walked into the hospital one day, my daughter had dropped me off and she was going to park the car and join me later. I had to go to the waiting area. And there sat a man that I didn't know, but I decided to go over and sit next to him. And as I sat down beside him, he began to hum a song. And the song sounded familiar to me, and I struck up a conversation, and I found out his name was Terry. And I said, Terry, are you a singer? And he began to share some of his life with me, and I said, what were you singing? And he began to sing, oh, I want to see him, look upon his face. And I joined in with him and harmonized with him. We sat there and sang together. Then we shared each other's stories of what we were going through physically. He was a diabetic, and I'd been diagnosed with cancer. And that kind of ended our conversation. My daughter walked in, she sat down beside me, and I turned and was just talking with her. Then they called Terry's name, and as he stood up, he turned around to me and touched me on the shoulder. And he said, with tears in his eyes and coming down his face, he said, I just feel like God wants me to say to you, this sickness is not unto death. Those were the exact words that I felt in my spirit the first day I heard that I had cancer. And I was just so moved by it. And we agreed that we would pray for each other. And as he walked away, I said to that servant of God, that obedient servant, I said, Terry, I will never forget you. And I never did. And that was the first of many times that God personally intervened, spoke to me directly. And I began to look and listen for his voice. We had flown out to MD Anderson in Houston, Texas for that hospital there that specializes in cancers for a second opinion. While we were there going through all the tests, there was one time that we had just finished up and my husband and I came out and we were sitting on a little bench waiting on the shuttle to take us back to our hotel. And I got a text from my brother Clark that said, your daddy, which is Dennis Kiesler, Daddy wants to hear your voice. So I called Mom and Daddy's house. Mama answered the phone, and of course, like Mom and I could always do, we struck up a conversation and we enjoyed talking to each other. My concern at that point was making Mom and Daddy feel okay about what was going on. At the end of my conversation with Mama, she says, well, your daddy wants to sing you a song. So she handed the phone to Daddy, and he began to sing as only he could. Amazing grace, how sweet. And as his words continued on, my heart just melted and I felt so loved. And as I was sitting outside there with my husband Merle and I looked up into the sky listening to my father's voice on the phone, there was a cloud in the shape of a cross. Now, I don't know, probably 2 jetliners had crossed paths or something and made it. I don't know, but at that particular moment, as I heard my father's voice singing Amazing Grace and I looked up, there it was. You know, I've been kind of a skeptic in my life. I need to see things proven, and I don't know, I'm just very practical. But when you're going through something and death has been spoken over you, you really begin to try to listen for God's voice and find Him. In October, in some of the middle of my treatment, and by the way, the doctor said this was the most intense treatment, and he says it to this day, that he had ever prescribed, just trying to save my life. He says he doesn't know another doctor that would prescribe this medicine even today, the regimen that I was on. But it was literally a do or die. If my body could take the treatment, I could survive this cancer. So in the middle of October, it was one of those days that it was neither hot nor cold outside. We didn't have the air conditioning on. We didn't have the heat on. There was not a ceiling fan on. We didn't have an open window. Nothing was happening. I was so weak that particular time that they canceled chemo for that 1 week, and that's the only time. I was sitting in my recliner laying back, and I was so weak I literally could not turn my head from one side to the other without a great deal of effort. My husband was in the home office, and he would come in from time to time and check on me just to see if I could take a sip of water. But I was so weak, I honestly didn't know if the next breath would be my last. And so as I sat there, and the only way I can describe it is if you had to hang on to a chin-up bar and your children's life depended on it, and you've got to hold on there for 30 minutes, an hour, you've just got to hold on and you cannot let go. It was tormenting. I felt like I could feel every string of fabric in my clothes, in my pajamas that I had on that day. It was very intense. And I just sat there. And at that time, I kind of began to think, you know, Lord, I've heard people speak about faith to me through this experience. I've heard people say that if you have enough faith, you could be healed instantly. And I knew that to be true. I've seen that happen in my life to other people. And I know the Bible speaks that if you have faith of a mustard seed, you can move a mountain. It can be cast into the sea. I had been prayed for in healing services early on when I was first diagnosed, and I had faith in that. And I couldn't understand what was happening. You know, I kind of even searched myself. I thought, is there sin in my life? Is there something I need to confess? Is that what's going on? But no, I found that I was covered by His blood. And I just didn't understand what was happening. And I began to lose faith in the formulas that you're supposed to use, that you're supposed to pray. People would say, don't claim that it's cancer. And yet sitting there, I'd think, yes, but if you get a paper cut and I ask you, why is your finger bleeding? You'll say, I got a paper cut. And I named the enemy, and I felt the Spirit I wanted to name it. And I said, you are cancer. I know what you are. I know that you are not from God because I saw the evil in the beginning. And I was just trying to hold on to my faith, and I felt confused. And at that moment, I just envisioned this huge mountain that was before me. And I was supposed to have that little faith of a mustard seed, but in truth, I felt I had the faith of a mountain. I had worked until I was exhausted with it. I had prayed, I'd been prayed for. I was exhausted with it. And I couldn't even move the mustard seed with the faith of a mountain. So I felt in total despair. And I think it was at that moment that I realized my children, my family, my life, nothing mattered anymore. The only thing that mattered to me was that God was present with me, was His presence with me. Nothing else began to matter. I was so focused on only needing His presence with me. And as I sat in the recliner that day, and I really felt that the next breath would be my last, something happened. Without any fans or air conditioning or windows open, I began to feel a breeze blow over me. As I sat there that day, sorry, I'm trying. As I sat there that day, I began to feel a breeze. And with no windows open and no air conditioning and no ceiling fan and nothing happening, I was just there in torment, I began to feel a breeze just begin to blow over me. Just begin to blow over me. And I don't know what it was. I'm not here trying to explain to you what it was. I just felt a breeze. And then a change happened in me. And as I looked at that mountain that just did not seem it wanted to move, something in my spirit, there was no proof. I was still just as sick. The tests were still just as bad. It wasn't going my way, but something in my spirit began to feel just the trickle of some rocks, little stones possibly, begin to tumble off the side of that mountain. And I begin to say, Lord, is that you? Is that him? Is he working? Because up until that point, as a childhood Bible verse that I had learned would come to my mind. I would ask, Lord, is that him? Is that God? When I'd see the cloud, the shape of a cross, I would say, is that him? When people would send me words of encouragement that matched exactly what I needed for that moment, and I would say, is that him? And sitting that day in that chair, feeling that breeze, I just said, Lord, is that him? Are you moving? So from that point on, there was a change in me, in my spirit, though the physical part just continued seemingly to get worse. But I carried a stone with me that my granddaughter Chloe had given me when I first felt the lump, even before I saw a doctor. And I remember thinking, David had more than one stone, but it only took one stone to slay that giant. And I took that stone with me, that little rock with me, to every doctor's appointment, to every treatment, through chemo, surgery, radiation, and chemo again. I kept that little rock with me. I call it my stone of remembrance. Another time that God spoke to me through His Word was after I had gotten the good news that the surgery had gone well, it was minimally invasive, no reconstruction at all needed, and that God had done a miraculous thing. But you know, when you've had cancer, when you've experienced something like this, every little pain you have makes you think, even now to this day, could it be cancer? But I was reading God's Word one day, and it was in Exodus 14:13. And when I said, God, will this cancer return? God answered through His Word and said, the Egyptians you see today, you will never see again. Now, any other time in my life, I would have just read through that verse and not thought twice about it. But I was so burdened that day and so fearful, and God spoke that to me. And I've hung on to that. I believe that is a promise of God. So one thing I will always be thankful for is what I experienced through cancer. That if I had not gone through this experience, in addition to the powerful closeness and realness of God, I would not have experienced some of the things I did. I'm so thankful for that experience. Matter of fact, I have made the statement, I'm thankful for every cancer cell that was in my body. And I hope that doesn't offend anyone. But had I not gone through that, I would not have experienced some of the many things that I can't even begin to tell you of my experiences with God. When you're going through something like this and you get so sick, and I was very weak and sick, there was one thing that I noticed was that when I would start to have a day or two of feeling better, my sense of humor would come back. And I realized in my sickest times when I had no sense of humor, because cancer is not funny and the treatment is not comical. But during those times, I just felt like I was cocooned. And even though the Satan, the sickness, the evilness that was attacking my body could not reach those innermost parts, because only God held that, protected that, and kept it from the enemy. You may come against things that the enemy is attacking you, but he cannot have that innermost part. Only Jesus can reach you there. The thing that I learned most, the thing that has changed my life, the thing that impacted me the most is through all of this, I found that it's not about the healing, it's about the healer. At the end of my Facebook post, I would say, whether I live or whether I die, I am His. And that's the thing I think I want to leave with you today, that no matter what you're going through, no matter what your circumstance, whether you live or whether you die, you are His. And His presence is all that matters. His presence is all that matters.
This is my story. This is my song.